Well, good morning, everybody. We're going to wait just for one more minute here before we get started. Make sure everybody has a chance to jump on. Got a great program for you today, talking about habit change and how we get the most out of it. Well, good morning or good afternoon, everybody, wherever you might be today. I'm Dave Clark. I'm a senior business and leadership coach, and I'm also an EXP agent. And today we're going to talk about the essentials of Zen habits and mastering the art of change, right? We all have certain habits that we love, and we have some that perhaps we need to change. And so I'm going to share some ideas with you today out of a great book that was written by Leo Babauta called Essential Zen Habits, Mastering the Art of Change, briefly. So let's get started. All right. So we know that the power of habits for good and for bad in our business, right? So why is it so hard to create a new habit and to eliminate a bad habit? You know, we struggle with habit change simply because oftentimes we have an unrealistic expectations of how things need to turn out, or how others should be, or in fact, how we should be. And when our expectations aren't met, we feel, or we can feel disappointed, we can feel frustrated, and we could feel sad. So when we turn from our mind movie, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about our mind movie in just a second, and embrace reality, we can overcome that inner resistance to habit change. So let's look at it this way, right? It's like there's a projector in our minds. And this mind movie starts when we're kids. It starts in the environment we're brought up in. It starts with all the things that we do to bring us up to this point in our life. And this mind movie is playing all the time, and what this mind movie plays is our ideals, our expectations, our vision of how things should be and how things should turn out and how we should be. But that mind movie oftentimes stands in our way, simply because it stops us from being able to first of all understand the habits that are bad for us, those things that are holding us back, keeping us from meeting our ideal person. And as we continue to run that mind movie every day, it just stands in our way of making any kind of change. And it tells us that changing a habit should be easy, and it actually should be fun. But we have to really go outside of our comfort zone to be able to make significant and long-lasting changes. Now, this mind movie, or what we might also term the childish mind, is that part of our mind that complains about how things are currently. It fears pain, and it just wants to, it just wants the pleasure, it just wants the comfort, and it doesn't really want things to be difficult. In other words, no drama. And so what that means is, as we push forward into a new area, trying to create a new habit, oftentimes we find we're like a rubber band, and that childlike mind brings us back. It just snaps back and keeps us in that place where it's oh so comfortable, right? Change is not fun. It's painful. So let's don't even go there, right? So one of the ways that we can address it is through gratitude. Gratitude is really one of the best antidotes we have to the resistance that, our childlike mind brings back to us every day. Because remember, if we don't do something different, we're going to get the same results over and over. So as we start with a gratitude statement, and perhaps it's even something that you do just before bedtime, just before your head hits the pillow, write down 3 gratitude statements, or write down 3 affirmations of change. Reprogram your subconscious mind so that childlike mind, that childish mind, doesn't constantly default back to the negative, right? Reprogram your subconscious so that during your sleep period, that subconscious brain is working to help you create those new habits. Just writing down 3 things before your head hits the pillow can be incredibly powerful. And as we start on this journey to change some habits, create new habits, and break old habits, remember that it's a process. Guys, and I can't stress this enough. It truly is a process. And that means we need to take it in incremental steps. We've all tried dieting, right? And so you just jump in and you completely change your diet. And about, 10 days into it, you're starting to, freak out and you can't wait to have a big bowl of ice cream. We have to start in baby steps and celebrate those successes each day as we move forward. So don't be afraid to start small and know that over time we do create great new habits and we can break old habits, right? And it's about, anything that we want, like time management, prospecting, skill building, and so on, because those are some of the main areas that we need to either create good habits around or break bad habits about. So just remember that childlike mind is going to push back because it's a lot easier to keep the status quo. There's pain involved in change, and that's the message you're going to get. So just remember, recognize it, kick it to the curb, and go forward with incremental steps to make change. All right. So let's talk about what can we do to fight the urge to give up and keep our momentum towards the creation of new and more productive habits. Some of the things that may be very helpful to you, and I'm going to give you quite a few, so be sure to jot these down. One, consider writing a short journal entry about your reflections and about your learnings. We're going to, of course, write down the habit that we want to create and take a look at the steps. But then as you begin those steps, those incremental steps, begin to journal the experience, what's working, what's not, so that we have, kind of a chronological record of those things that are moving us forward and those things that are stopping us. And treat habit formation as if it's a learning process. It's a way to learn not only about yourself, but about your mind, being mindful, and learning about the resistance that you have, and more, and write that down so that the critter that you're dealing with, the enemy. And the enemy is that mind movie that keeps pushing back and saying, go back to the comfort, go back to where there's no pain. Change is not good. Let's stay where we are. Right. And remember that gradually the habit becomes your new norm. And as you expand a bit more and you keep pushing your comfort zone a little bit more at a time, you'll see increasing and more productive results as we go forward. So ask yourself a question, and you may want to journal on this. So what does the resistance feel like? What is that pushback? If you will, imagine that, the angel on this shoulder and the devil on this shoulder. And as you start to make change, that angel is saying, hey, we got to do it. It's worth it. Let's make sure that, we receive all the benefits that we can, and, everything that we're capable of doing. On the other side, you got this little devil guy that's going, nah, let's don't go there. It's too painful. And by the way, everything is good right where it is. So let's just stay there, right? So as that begins to happen to you, when you start to recognize that pushback, you feel like you're kind of being pulled back to what you once were and not towards the habit that you want. Recognize it as exactly what it is: resistance. It's okay to accept a little bit of discomfort. It's okay to relax and just say, okay, I get this, but I'm going to continue moving forward. And then find the gratitude. Write your gratitude statement. I'm so thankful that I am able to recognize this resistance and move past it, right? So, and if there is such a thing, write down what's good about the discomfort. It wakes you up, it gets you going, it keeps you alive. You understand that you are making progress, and that is why we feel that certain level of discomfort. Now, when you miss a day or two and you haven't progressed, you can feel bad about it, or you can let it derail you completely, or you can flow around it and make it not such a big deal. Let me give you a great example. Oftentimes people will wake up and perhaps have some negative thoughts in the morning, negative self-talk. And this can be very devastating, especially if it's starting your day, right? So if you're one of those folks that, gets up in the morning and the first few thoughts you have is, oh my gosh, I could have done this better. I should have made that call yesterday. I didn't get my prospecting done. So I'm going to, feel bad about it all day. Just recognize exactly what's happening. Recognize that these thoughts are not the thoughts you want to embrace. These are the thoughts that keep us where we are. And so recognize these thoughts, kick them to the curb, and just say, okay, I get it. I've been doing this for a long time. I'm just not going to accept it today. In fact, I'm going to write down a couple of gratitude statements and change the entire focus of my day and start moving towards the positive, right? In other words, it's not a big deal. Don't let it dominate. Don't let it put you in a funk. Recognize it for what it is and kick it to the curb. You have the ability to do that. It may take a little bit of practice, but the more practice you'll find it, the easier it will become, to the point where one day you wake up and it's not there at all. You don't have that negative and that baseless and that groundless, self-talk. Right now, again, a key habit skill is learning to flow around the disruptions. So things that get us off track, and just keep going, circle back. Take care of those, when you feel that, that kind of that groundlessness, that feeling of not being anchored, you're not certain that things are going to go the right way, a little bit of feeling of loss. Just remember, our minds don't really work that way. We don't normally like that. So change that to a positive, to a gratitude statement, to something positive. Replace those negative thoughts as they come up. But the first part, guys, is recognizing that they're there and setting them aside, right? So one of the most difficult tasks that we can give to our childish mind is just letting go of what it really wants and accepting life as it is, so to speak, seeing that it may be already enough, right? So it can be disappointing to let go of a habit that you've had high hopes for, but if it's not working and it's taking you down the wrong path, then sometimes we've just got to let it go. But we got to remember that these habit changes are really a lot about what we learn about ourselves. What are we truly capable of? We know where we are, we know what we've got, but what is it that we can do in the future? And oftentimes I talk with clients about seeing them for who they can become, not necessarily who they are today, and then looking for how we light that path to get them there. And you're responsible for this in your own life. So just keep thinking about, what does it look like after I make this change? What's the benefit going to be? How am I going to feel? Put yourself in that place. Little thing called future pacing, right? So put yourself in that place so that you can feel it. Now, if making a commitment about habit change isn't working for you, then you might want to increase that commitment by sharing it with some other folks. Share it with your spouse, your partner, your kids. Believe me, your kids will make sure they remind you about it every day. Share it with your partner in business, your manager, your team, anybody that you think can be a positive support for you, because they'll help keep you on track. But more importantly, you will work harder to keep yourself on track when you know that others are paying attention to the habits that you're trying to create, right? And again, remember, if you miss one day, do not beat yourself up. We don't need more of the negative. We need the positive. So don't beat yourself up, but please get right back on track. Do whatever you can to reinstate that goal, to reinstate the effort that you're making towards that habit. Don't let it go too far. If you let it go more than a couple of days, then we're kind of like back to where we were. So recognize that we've got off track, get yourself back on track, and go. Prospecting might be a great example. If we're trying to create a habit to prospect every day, and right now we know we need to go after listings, but if we're not doing it, we need to create that habit, get it into our schedule, line up what we're going to do, who are we going to talk to, make it easy for yourself to do it. But if something comes up and you don't get it done, don't beat the heck out of yourself. Just schedule it again and get back at it the next day, so we can feel that sense of accomplishment. Because guys, when we accomplish things, when we check things off the list, the endorphin rush comes in and we feel good. We feel great about it. Think about the last time you got on the treadmill or went for a long walk or a run. Those endorphins kick in and we feel good. And after a period of time, we can become addicted to it. Now, the other thing about sharing your ideas and the changes that you're trying to make, be sure that if there are people that are not supportive of these changes, that we kind of get them out of our life, or that we understand that they probably don't want us to change. There may be people at home or in the family or people at work that don't want to see you succeed. I know it sounds weird. It sounds totally crazy. But the fact is, and especially if you look at work, sometimes when you begin to succeed at a level higher than what you had before, the people who are at that same level get a little suspicious. What's happening here? And oftentimes they try to bring you back down. Be really careful not to allow that to happen, because that can truly derail us. So be careful about that toxic conversation that might occur because you're beginning to see a higher level, of achievement yourself through the habits that you're changing, right? And one of the best ways that I found to be really a good model for change is just to do it, just to show others that it is possible. So think about it this way. Perhaps instead of some folks trying to bring you down, we bring them up. High tide floats all boats. Let's bring them up with us. Let's talk about, hey, I've finished, setting a new habit on setting a schedule every day and adding my prospecting in and following up on my old leads and, doing some recruiting and all the things that I know I've got to do every day. And so why don't you join with me? Let's get together in the mornings and make this happen. Bring them along if you can. But again, if they won't get on board with you, just ask them if they would mind stepping aside and let you, continue on your path. Now, a good practice also for good habit change is not to attach too much to the outcome. Have a good intention for the habit, but don't worry so much about exactly, getting exactly what you plan to have, because sometimes we can't control it. And remember, incremental steps. And along the way, we may find that we need to take a right turn or a left turn and reset that habit, reset those expectations. So it's about the journey, guys. It's about, the incremental steps that we take along the journey, and not quite as much of a focus perhaps on the day that all of a sudden we just wake up and we have a whole new habit, right? It's the process. And tell yourself that if you slip and fall, it's just another lesson. Let's take whatever lesson comes from it, write it in your journal. This got me off the rails today, so I wasn't able to move forward like I wanted to, but I'm not going to allow this to happen again, right? Identify it. Mistakes mean you are pushing into new ground. You're exploring something interesting. You're exploring new things. And if you weren't, you wouldn't be making mistakes, right? We're going to make mistakes. It's okay. Again, eliminate it from yourself, from that negative self-talk that you might be experiencing. Just see every mistake as an opportunity to learn, something we can get better at, feedback on the process, if you will. And guys, just understand it is crucial for improvement. So embrace it. Don't fear it, and definitely do not let it get you off track, because that is the one thing that will cause that rubber band to snap back and we'll go right back to doing exactly what we did. Now, one thing to think about too, a lot of people, as they look at, either creating a new habit or quitting an old habit, take too big of a bite. They tackle too much at one time. And I'll take the diet as a best example, because I think everybody is familiar with somebody who's been on a diet or they've been on a diet themselves. And it's when you cut out sugars altogether or you cut out proteins altogether, whatever it might be. Sometimes it's too much. Just pare it back a little bit at a time, right? Incremental steps. Don't be afraid to take the small steps. And one thing I would say for sure that's important, work on setting new habits, new positive habits, before you ever start on one that you want to quit. Get this process down in the creation of those new great habits, those good habits, before you tackle something that you really want to stop doing, right? So let's talk about what a trigger is and how it relates to a habit. Each bad habit has some kind of a need, or we wouldn't be doing it. If it's, if it's, maybe having a drink, we get a little stressed, so we have a drink. We get a little stressed, so maybe we take up smoking. We get a little stressed, so, we have to do something that allows us, or we've convinced ourselves that's going to help calm us down, for example, right? So let's identify those things that are our trigger points. Let's say that, we have gone full steam all day long. We've not even had a break. We get home and we're cranky, we're edgy, and we just want to be left alone, right? So what's the trigger that we need to flip the switch so that when we get there, we leave work behind and now we understand we're in the family moment? Because one of the big issues we work with today is work-life balance. And oftentimes, if you take that frustration home and you carry it into the family, it can be a little toxic, right? So let's be really careful about that and understand what the triggers for that are. For each trigger and each need, let's write down a positive replacement habit that will fill that same need, right? So if you do something negative in response to, a deal becoming difficult, let's look at what we can do that's positive. Some of those things can be very simple. Taking a walk. Taking a walk can help you clear your mind, and it's just part of the habit. Work out for a little bit. Replace those negative behaviors with positive, beneficial behaviors that you want to create. And the more you do it, the easier it becomes for you, right? So when you're feeling stress, you're feeling anxiety, you're feeling boredom, loneliness, whatever, just pause and turn your attention to the feeling. Recognize it first and be really curious about, how did I get to this place and why am I feeling this way? Where is it? Is it in your heart? Is it in your head? Sometimes things affect us differently. I hear constantly, I'm so tired at the end of the day, right? So let's see how it makes us feel. And, we don't have to avoid it. Sometimes we have to embrace it, recognize it, and then find a way around it. So without judgment or wishing that, maybe I wasn't in this place, kind of treat those feelings a little bit like a wake up call, a friend, if you will, in terms of just saying, hey, look, this is a problem. We need to work on this and see if we can change this a little bit. Right. And then, when we're quitting a bad habit, guys, just remember, change only one trigger at a time. Once you've identified the triggers that cause behavior to occur, just try to change one at a time. Again, if we take too big a bite, we're trying to take too big of a chunk out of this, it can cause us to fail. And then we start over again. And if this happens, too often, then, that child mind is going to say, you know what, I told you so. It's too tough. It's too hard. It's too painful. Stop what you're doing. Let's go back to status quo. We can't let that happen. So the real question is, if you mess up along the way, as we're creating a new habit or getting rid of an old habit, it's not that you'll mess up, because we will. We're going to. It's human nature. But it's what you do when you do mess up. How do you recognize it? How do you set the tone to change it? And then how do you actually take that step forward to continuing? So take the mistakes in stride. Take the long view. Take the long view that, what you do really matters. And if you mess up a day or even 2 days or 3 days, whatever it is, remember that sometimes creating this new habit can take a lot longer. So just get back on track and keep going. So how do we create a new habit? Well, first, we want to pick one new easy habit that we can do once a day. So what might that look like? All right. So let's say that we want to learn to schedule our time a little more efficiently, but we're not currently using a calendar. We're not using a daily planner. So what we might want to do, instead of saying, okay, I'm going to set a new habit, I'm going to schedule every single thing I do every single day, right? That's a pretty big do. Might be a little difficult. So what if we were to say, I'm just going to take one thing. I'm going to take, let's say, lead follow-up, for example, and I'm going to choose a time in the morning, and I'm going to start there. I'm going to put my lead follow-up, excuse me, into the calendar, for the next week. And then start there. And then every day, that success will build on the next day. Now let's talk about what could get us off the rails. All right. So for example, we say we're going to start scheduling our lead follow-up. And the very first day we start to do this, somebody steps in, comes up to your desk or to your office or calls you on the phone and says, hey, you got a minute? Got a minute's are killers. because they're porcupining you with whatever their issue is, and it takes you off track. And one thing to remember, this is a little bit of a side, but one thing to remember is that when you are working on a project and you're interrupted by an email, by a phone call, by a text message, by somebody at your desk, it takes about 8 minutes to solve the problem, but the worst is it takes about 20 minutes to get back on track. So think about a half hour just being shot if you allow somebody to come in and mess with you while you're trying to do something, especially a new habit that you're trying to create, right? Now, the other thing is you may not want to start like right away. So for example, if this is your new habit, we may not necessarily want to start it right away tomorrow, but first of all, let's create a vow to accomplish this. Write it down. This is what I want to create. This is the habit I want to create. And this is how I'm going to do it. And I'm not going to let anything get in my way, period. I'm starting on Thursday morning. And then create the space so that it can happen, right? And also set the trigger. In this particular case, a trigger or a reminder might be, okay, I'm going to get up in the morning. I'm going to exercise, from 8 to 9. And then from 9 to 9:30, I'm going to get showered and get cleaned up and get ready to go. And then at 9:30, I start my follow-up. Okay. So the trigger might be the exercise. Now the exercise might actually end up being the habit, right? Depending on where you are with that. So it might be the exercise and then, taking the shower and then getting onto your lead management. And start with minimum viable habit. I mean, again, simple, granular, keep it small. Small successes lead to huge, huge successes over time. That's the formula. Granular change over time equals huge benefits. All right. And focusing on what you enjoy about creating this new habit can be really important. Let's say if you're doing lead follow-up and you really enjoy a great cup of coffee or tea in the morning, bring that with you. Make that part of the enjoyment of the process. Enjoy that moment as you're making these calls so that we are creating a positive environment and we're training our brain to think positively about the activities that we're taking. And it'll be much easier to do the very next day, right? Be sure we're practicing mindfulness, which means be aware of what you are doing and what you're not doing. Be careful of what we call the tyranny of the urgent. Those are those things, those flashy objects that fly in front of you all day long. You don't have to reach out and grab every one of them, guys. It's not critical. Some of those we need to just have the patience, be calm, let them pass us by. We don't have to instantly react. And the fewer times that we react, the more times we can focus on mindfulness of what we're accomplishing. Be sure that we're also reflecting in our journal. As you have a successful day, write it down. Here's what I did. Here's how it worked. Here's what I said no to. Here's what I said yes to. Keep that journal. And then remember, you're going to be running your mind movie all day long. So be aware that mind movie is running. That mind movie might say, oh my God, I can't make a phone call. I hate making a phone call. It's just, it's the most painful thing to pick up that phone and call somebody, right? That's your mind movie. Recognize it, set it aside and say, today it's going to be different. Today, I'm going to embrace the opportunity. I'm going to pick up this phone with positive expectancy and I'm going to make this call. All right. And then practice it daily, increase it gradually. So if you're starting out with lead management, perhaps the next day, we're going to kick in some additional prospecting, maybe some farming, maybe some recruiting calls, whatever it is. Just increase it a little bit each day. Maybe, 15 minutes I'm going to add to my lead follow-up, hour. I'm going to add another 15 minutes. I'm just going to make 2 recruiting calls, 2 a day, right? Help build my organization. That's going to be pretty fantastic. All right. So just increase it gradually. Now, how do we how do we quit a bad habit? Right? Well, first of all, like I said, don't attempt to quit any bad habits until you have several successful new habits created. Go positive, and then we're going to start working on the bad habits, right? And then track your habits during the day. This might be where we need to be mindful. What are we actually doing throughout the day? Are we allowing others to influence our time management? Are they taking our time away from us? I would call those people time bandits or time pirates. They use up your time with no real concern for what you end up doing, with your time during the day. So take a look at what things are keeping you, from achieving the positive habits that you're creating, or being able to eliminate the bad habits. Take a look at your triggers, and this might take you some time. So be patient with yourself. Take some time, identify those things that trigger you to do something, right? Those triggers will become more and more apparent as you pay closer and closer attention. And then list your needs. If you have a bad habit, there's got to be some reason that you have kept that bad habit, and you may have had it for years, right? And so, what are the needs in doing that same thing day after day? And let's try to either replace those needs or see how we can create a positive replacement to fill those needs, right? And then use the techniques that you learn. I would suggest you pick up that book, Essential Zen Habits. It's an awesome book, and it gives you some real good step-by-step things and some things that we weren't able to have time for today. But take care of yourself. Take some steps. Be mindful. Be aware of your mindset. Setting good habits first and succeeding with those before we quit a bad habit. And then just remember, gradual change, guys. That's the key to all of this. Gradual, incremental change. Don't go cold turkey and try to do it all at one time. And then learn to recognize the urges to go back, right? There's always going to be the little devil on your shoulder that says, oh, yeah, so you made a little bit of progress, big deal. It's a lot more comfortable if you come back here to status quo. Just remember, we will snap back and we'll start doing exactly what we were doing if we aren't mindful and if we don't address it and recognize it and make a conscious decision to step forward, right? Keep the right mindset. And by acknowledging what's happening and resetting that mindset, that will help you keep moving forward. And again, when you fail, don't get off the rails, get back on track. Don't let a small failure, or an emotional issue or anything else, reset what you're doing. Keep moving forward, keep moving forward, keep moving forward, right? So remember, should you fail, it's not the end. It's just the next beginning. Get back on track, reset, and change, because it is worth the effort. It is absolutely worth the effort. Now, my email is below, Dave Clark, TCE, like Thomas Charlie Echo @gmail.com. And I would invite you to email any questions that you might have for me. I will be more than happy to reach back out to you. But I do thank you for joining me today. And I absolutely wish you ultimate success on creating those great new habits and eliminating those bad habits. Let me just check here for a quick example. Somebody's asking for an example of a gratitude statement. And again, that could be, I am very grateful for my ability to take control of my time each day. That might be a great gratitude statement. I'm very thankful for the people that support me in making these changes. I'm very thankful for my spouse, my kids, my coworkers, my manager, for their help and their support. I am getting better each day, and I am thankful for the opportunity, to make these changes. Anything that you're very truthfully and honestly thankful for in terms of just good results, write it down. And again, write it down just before your head hits the pillow at night. Let your subconscious mind work on it all night long, and you will wake up with a completely different attitude.